Hi, I'm Lucien, the designer for Eden Left Behind, a mech exploration TTRPG. I've been thinking about the different stories I enjoy, and I came to the realization of something a lot of them have in common. This collection of stories I like to refer to as emotionally unfiltered. They don't hold back on showing everything that life has to offer. Stories that can make you cry, laugh, feel good, and sometimes just say, hell yeah. I promise this connects to TTRPGs, and I'll explain how to write or GM this way afterwards, so just sit tight with your hot chocolate and enjoy. Spoilers for the following: Tatsuki Fujimoto, the guy that recorded himself trying to levitate in his living room, who also happens to be my favorite author. Chainsaw Man is a story about a teen boy trying to navigate a world where people use him for being essentially a superhero. There's a part at the end of Volume 18 where Denji, the protagonist, comes home to find his house burned down. His dogs, cat, and sister are all allegedly dead, although they don't find the bodies. While searching the rubble, his stomach growls, and Denji simply says that all he wants to do right now is eat sushi. The volume ends with another character showing a face of disgust. She doesn't like sushi. What a weird way to end a book, right? But it's relatable. Denji didn't eat all day. He's hungry, he's exhausted, he's in no condition to fight whoever did this. And I don't want this scene to be confused with the thing that Marvel quips do, where they break the tension all the time. The tension very much stays while this whole food debate takes place. Something bad is still going on. Denji's life has been ruined. But if he's going to do anything about it, he needs to eat first. And he wants sushi. I won't spoil what happens when they go find sushi, or if the animals and sister made it out alive. But if you've read or seen the sushi scene, you know that this tension is not lost. Chainsaw Man does a pretty remarkable job of having a story so weird that works so well. Chainsaw Man rides a land shark while fighting a giant baby whose intestines make a tornado. Over half an hour of the Reze movie is dedicated to a Sharknado joke, and it's beautiful. It's like those "man test, is this cool?" images. Fujimoto does not limit the emotions and themes in his stories. He shows love, depression, friendship, family, humor, and that hell yeah feeling that doesn't really have a name. Hideo Kojima, creator of the Metal Gear Solid games and now Death Stranding series, along with his own company, Kojima makes games for nobody but himself. His stories are confusing, overcomplicated, and way too long, but somehow it works. His games receive endless praise. His stories touch people's hearts in a way that many other games just can't. This is the same dude that made 6 different versions of one character. The same guy that made a walking simulator about how friendship can save the world, and then was surprised when people liked it. Kojima games are weird. He uses comedic names and events in a story that takes itself unbelievably serious. People named Die Hardman for a guy that has a hard time dying, Revolver Ocelot for a dude that meows while holding a 6-shooter, or just the concept of a cardboard box being the best disguise regardless of location. Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, has a mute assassin named Quiet, who wasn't even named for being mute. We hear her talk at the start of the game. The plot of Metal Gear Solid 5 revolves around you getting revenge on a guy in a fancy hat named Skullface, who has friends like this guy, who's constantly on fire, riding a flaming unicorn, and this kid, who psychically controls a giant robot, and parasitic super soldiers? Kojima games never once make a joke about any of these. The ridiculousness, contrasted with a completely serious plot, feels like I have one of those sinus cleansers going through my brain constantly. The lack of consistency feels intentional in the most wonderful way. It shocks my mind with the weird, and then shoves in a really well-crafted, meaningful story to my freshly removed expectations. The confusing nature of Kojima stories, mixed with the almost violent movement of emotions, creates a feeling that can't quite be described. It goes deeper than just watching, reading, or playing a story. The games feel like how a story was meant to be told, not made from a formula, but from passion, care, and something meaningful to share. Mystery game Alan Wake 2 has a level that is just a musical. You shoot flares at shadow monsters while watching yourself sing and dance on a massive projector screen. The level lasts at least 10 minutes. It's not just a short scene for laugh. It's literally a full song and dance, with costume changes, different sections and tempo changes, to even backup dancers. A game about a depressed writer is filled with humor, weirdness, and over-the-top action scenes. The first time I played this game and saw the live-action cutscenes, I thought the acting was not so good.
Wait. This isn't right. I haven't written anything.
He's so humble.
Okay, you got me. Good prank, very funny. But yeah, sad to say, I've not written this.
But as the game continued, I started to think maybe that was the intention. The somewhat stiff acting from Alan was very starkly contrasted by a character played by the same actor, Tom Zane. While Wake talks awkwardly and choppy, Zane is quick, unpredictable. He actually feels like a character you'd meet in a weird dream.
Come on, I'll fix you a drink. You and me, Alan. We're in this together. Two artists collaborating, remember?
The whole game hints towards a climax at Deerfest, an event that the whole town of Bright Falls seems very excited for, creating floats for a parade, putting banners on streetlights, and talking about the previous Deerfest as you walk by. The story shoves you into the deep end of the culture in Bright Falls. You visit a failed coffee-themed amusement park, speak to socially awkward police officers. A mission even revolves around you learning the history of a well and using that knowledge to complete a Deerfest float. While playing, I became excited for, but also dreading, Deerfest. I wanted to see what all the hype was about. The game has drunk old men playing rock and roll for you while you shoot zombies, the horror of a loved one not picking up the phone, an alternate world that traps you in New York, and a full short film in Finnish without subtitles that you can completely miss. Alan Wake doesn't hold anything back. This unfiltered style of storytelling lets the viewer experience such a wide variety of emotions. It never becomes tiring or boring. One moment you're fighting giant squid monsters, the next you're teleporting with an umbrella. It captures the human experience so much better than stories that intentionally try to hit every emotion. These stories just go with the flow. They might be sad for a good 2 hours straight, but any emotion never overstays its welcome. When the mood changes, it feels right. It's not forced to relieve tension, and not strategically placed to follow some plan. When all sense of reality is gone, we can still see the human experience peeking through. That's what makes this style so powerful. It shows people and circumstances that are so exaggerated, they almost instantly become metaphors. And us as readers, watchers, players, can use it to relate to the characters, bond to other people, and discover something about ourselves. So, role-playing games. How can we incorporate this style of storytelling? Let me start with GMing, and then I'll go into writing afterwards. GMs, I have 3 things for you. Over-exaggerate. Let players experiment fully. And mix descriptive styles. I know these sound pretty generic, but let me explain. Over-exaggerate. Don't be afraid to go a little overboard. Make the swords so shiny it's hard to look at. Be disgusted by your own monster descriptions. Make dragons the speed of fighter jets. Say things that are so crazy, yet true to the narrative in a way that feels freeing. If the world can behave this way, then so can the players. The experience becomes very loose. The social pressure slips away. The table will feel so much warmer. By exaggeration, I don't mean describe things more than they really are. I mean, make things in the fiction actually grander than they would usually be, and describe it as such. Make towers a kilometer high, characters with over-the-top clothing, a smell so good it makes you drool. These sorts of descriptions will immerse players easier than everyday mundane descriptions. Let players experiment fully. Let them negotiate with the Dark Lord. If they want to plot against their employers, don't limit the idea. Let them come up with the plan. If they want to invent some kind of device, help them out with how long it might take and how much materials they would need. The first campaign I ever ran, my players finished creating an artificial angel, gave her life with the powers of a few godly favors, and then one player got married to the angel. None of this was planned. In fact, the half-angel was supposed to just be a passing description in a bit of world building for an evil lair. But if I didn't let the players experiment fully, that whole story would not exist. Mix descriptive styles. Don't feel fixed to just one style of description. Go from cartoony in one scene to extreme realism in the next. Whatever fits the tone of the scene is what you should stick with. This will allow everyone to feel the full impact of what's going on. This can also apply to background music. Play jazz in a fantasy setting. Play acoustic guitar in a sci-fi setting. Play drum and bass during a chase scene. The music will inform the table what kind of wiggle room they have when it comes to tone. A slow jazz scene will inform players this should be mellow, calm. They'll be less likely to behave with aggression or crack too many jokes. Inversely, playing modern music during combat scenes can also be a fun tone switch. I ran a cyberpunk game where usually the music was just ambient, but during a shootout, the soundtrack consisted of Deftones, Yeet, and the Doom soundtrack. Don't be afraid to experiment with this kind of thing. My Heart finale was played to well-known classical music. and that was one of the best endings I could have asked for. Combining all three of these techniques will create a story that may seem inconsistent in tone during play, but the effect of it afterwards will be much stronger. You'll remember these stories for years, bringing it up with those friends every time something reminds you of it. I try to embody this writing style the best I can in Eden. Writing a role-playing game in this style is actually quite similar to running it. Exaggerate your text in a way that creates a clear image in the reader's mind. You don't need to write long stories or even multiple sentences for this either. For example, the Sunflower Station in Eden, the locations where pilots take vacation days, plan missions, or are reborn upon death, is 65,000 kilometers in volume. The central sphere is 50 kilometers in diameter, a megastructure roughly half the size of the Death Star. But there are possibly thousands of them. The exaggerated size and number of these structures creates a clear idea of how imposing of a presence it would be to watch a Sunflower Station orbit overhead. Another method you can incorporate is different written-in scenes with very different feels. So in Eden, there's several sorts of modes to scenes. Things like traveling, negotiation, combat, vacation, relationship. Giving each a unique emotional identity can create contrast within the gameplay. You'll go from shooting rockets at a giant slug while piloting a 3-story tall robot to narrating the time nobody showed up to your birthday. There's this feeling of raw, unfiltered emotion that pushes through when scenes are so focused like this. It makes everything feel so much more vibrant. You'll start to feel the same way your character feels. You'll start to think like them, and when the session is over, it becomes a, wow, that was really cool. When creating a role-playing game, don't limit yourself to just one mood. Let any emotion you think is worth exploring be shown on the page. Contrast some art of a badass fight scene with characters looking bored or tired. Let downtime mechanics spread their wings with a large variety of events. Birthday parties, funerals, holidays, sleeping in. It may all seem disconnected at first, but when the visual style, word choice, and setting is consistent, the varying tones will mix together to create one hell of a blend. Life is not just one mood, so let your game share that. This is just my thoughts on the topic, however, so I would love to hear what other people have to say. If you have anything you would like to hear me talk about, let me know in the comment section. I try to respond to everything. I post weekly here about mechs, game design, and storytelling, so if you're into that kind of thing, subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.